I would reassure people that the country's gas stores are in line with what you would expect at this time of year, and we don't see any immediate threat to our supplies from places like the North Sea.
Oil prices have shot up past $110 a barrel. They're starting to stabilise slightly, but not much below that currently, the biggest daily rise in history. The increase will put more pressure on the economy here and around the world. Will it also start to affect how we relate to one another, though? The government is publishing a plan to boost community cohesion today. Steve Reid is the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, and he joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Great to have you with us. Well, let's start with this new plan for community cohesion. What's worrying you? What's prompted this?
Well, the country is strongest when we all stand together, but there are a lot of forces that are trying to pull the country apart, either, extremes in politics, some of what we see on social media. And it's very important that we, as a government, support communities to tackle the issues that are creating division and invest where that will help to bring our communities back together.
What does that look like then? Because your plan calls for, and I'm quoting from it here, respect for different cultures, but it also says that newcomers need to, quote, engage with and embrace what it means to be British. How will that work? How will you balance both?
Well, I think it's very important where you've got people coming into the country. They should be supported to learn English, first of all, because that's in their own interests. It helps people get a job. It helps people integrate with society. If you're a woman and you're being subject to domestic abuse, for instance, and you can't speak English, you're isolated and you can't find support. But it's also important that we all share a common language and can speak to each other. It's why when I was a student, I used to volunteer in a refugee centre and teach people English. That was great, I think, for people that were able to learn English, but I learnt a lot too, as somebody who was volunteering. So we want to promote activities like that.
But are you defining what it means to be British? And I asked this in the context last week of Kemi Badenoch, who said that other cultures do not matter and shouldn't matter as much as ours. And it's really important to say that out loud. I mean, is she right? Will you be defining what British culture is?
I don't think British people need the government to come out and define who they are. We all know what it is to be
Well, it's not for British people, is it? Forgive me, it's for people who haven't come from here. That's the point of this, I assume.
No, it's for British people as well. If you look at initiatives that we're running, like the Pride in Place programme, which is looking at the 300 so far, we're funding it's a £5 billion pot of money to support people living in 300 of the communities that were most left behind by Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives. And it's areas that feel that they have no opportunity and no chance, that feel the most divided or the most susceptible to those that want to divide them. By bringing in that money, by putting up to £20 million in each of those communities and allowing local people themselves to decide how the money is spent, we build bridges that bring people together, because whatever their background, so they all have a shared interest in making their locality, their neighbourhood, their hometown as successful as it can be. So it's absolutely for people who are already here.
But what about areas where that's not the case? I mean, it's a very rosy assessment. It's very hopeful. I'm sure lots of people would really love that to be the way this country runs. Yeah. But the truth is there are areas where one community has come from another country dominating a particular area, and they don't want to adopt a British culture. They don't want to adopt British values. How will you be able to change that? Do you want to?
Well, of course, we do expect people to adopt British values.
But they're not, though. That's what I'm saying. At the moment, it's not happening. So do you want to change that?
I think there are some areas where it's not happening, but part of what we're going to do is looking at where you've got extremists coming into the country from elsewhere, including hate preachers. We're changing the visa system so those individuals can't come into the UK and spread their hatred anymore. We're looking at what is happening on social media as well, and we've announced plans to tackle foreign interference in our elections, our democracy, and funding hatred on social media, which is used to target people. There's an awful lot of forces that want to pull this country apart, and we need to do what we can as a government to support people to stand together, which is what British people instinctively will want to do.
I understand that. I think that's a slightly different issue, though, to those people, and they often, they listen to this programme and they often message in to talk to us about it, who live in areas where they feel like, my town doesn't feel like my town anymore. It didn't used to feel like this. And they want to see some change. They want to see something shift. I suppose I'm asking you, do you also want to see that change?
Well, that's precisely why we're announcing initiatives like the Pride in Place programme.
But how will that? Because what you're saying is that money will go to communities and they can decide how to spend it. But I'm saying those communities don't want to engage with the government. They don't want to engage with what you're talking about. They want to do things in their way.
I represent and live in an area that is extremely diverse, and everybody wants to make that area as successful as it can be. There are forces that want to divide people from each other, but the government needs to be bringing people together. And the approach we're taking through the Pride in Place programme as a very significant example is giving areas more funding and then bringing people together to take decisions for themselves about how they want their area to be. If you do that, then whatever different backgrounds people may have come from originally, you're focusing on what brings them together in that community and focusing on how you can build bridges between people and help them work more closely together.
Do you think all cultures should be given the same weight in this country?
The same weight?
Yeah, the same weight and value. Should we value all cultures
No.
the same?
I think British values are the values that we would expect
what are
people
they?
who are coming into this country to adopt.
What are British values?
Tolerance, freedom, support for democracy. All of those things are part of what it means to be British. We teach British values in schools and have done for some time now, and it's very important that people who want to come in from abroad and become British themselves adapt to British values and accept British values.
How will you check that people are learning English? Because that's often a condition of the visa system anyway. It's not working, obviously. How will you check that? Will there be groups going around checking people can speak English properly? How will that work?
Well, that'll be part of the review that we will conduct following the publication of the report today. But there is an awful lot of English language teaching available. Councils have access to English language teaching. It's available online now as well. But we need to be looking at how we make sure people who are coming into the country can speak English. Because if you can't lean over the garden fence and talk to your neighbour, you're not going to be able to be part of a more cohesive community. And as I said, when I was younger myself, I used to volunteer to teach English to refugees. And the people I was teaching English to were desperate to learn the language properly so that they could become part of British society. But I learnt a lot myself by taking part in volunteering like that. I learnt about people, their journeys and where they'd come from. It enriched my life, and I think it helps people who are coming into the country to assimilate more quickly.
Would it be a condition of staying here? Could people be deported if they refuse to learn English or they just don't do it?
Well, there's an expectation that people coming into the country will learn English, and we will conduct a review now following the publication of the report today, and we'll look at where we need to go to ensure that people have access to English language teaching so that they can be part of a
it could be a condition. They could be removed if they refuse to engage.
Well, I think we need to look in the round at how we're supporting people to integrate, but there will be a review following on from the publication today.
Should the Al-Quds March be banned next weekend? There are real concerns about it. It's a pro-Iranian march. There's been racism, anti-Semitism there in the past. You're talking about community cohesion. Lots of deep concern about that. Should that march be allowed to go ahead?
Well, we're talking about British values as well, aren't we? And freedom of speech is one of those values. It's a police operational matter for that march. If they believe the risks are too high, they will take appropriate action. But assuming the march does go ahead, then those participating will be expected to abide by the law, not to be targeting groups with hatred. And if they do,
but that's interesting, isn't it? Because we've just talked about British values, and you've spoken at length about the need for people to adopt those. And I've said that this march has happened in the past. We've seen lots of anti-Semitism, lots of incidents where it's not gone well. You've seen the proof of that previously, and you're suggesting that it could be allowed to go ahead because of freedom of speech. It sounds like the lines are a bit blurry here. Well,
freedom of speech is a British value, as long as it's happening within the law.
A lot of the people on that march don't hold British values.
Well, as long as it goes ahead within the law. But as I said, that will be a matter for the police. It's not a matter for government whether individual marches do or don't take place. We have a legal framework, and the police are charged with enforcing that legal framework, and they will assess the risks and take appropriate action.
We've been talking about Iran obviously a lot on the programme this morning, mainly focusing on the gas price. There are now significant concerns about the UK's energy security. Is the government considering further intervention to protect British consumers?
Well, the right thing to do is to keep the situation under review, and that's what we're doing. I've been listening to some of what's been said about gas and reading it as well. And I would reassure people that the country's gas stores are in line with what you would expect at this time of year, and we don't see any immediate threat to our supplies from places like the North Sea.
How much do we
Norway.
have? How much do we have in gas storage?
I don't have the figures in front of me, but it's in line with what you'd expect to have at this time of year, and there's no immediate threat or expected threat to supplies coming in from Norway or the North Sea or the United States in the form of LPG.
But there is a very obvious threat to the global stability of this particular market. I mean, we're talking about the oil prices this morning absolutely shooting up, the biggest daily rise in history. There is obviously huge insecurity. Is the government looking at a direct intervention to help people pay their bills?
Well, the government's monitoring the situation so that we can take action if that is required. At the moment, it isn't, because stores are where they need to be.
Well,
but I do think
gas storage. I mean, you keep saying that, but gas storage in this country. I mean, some people say 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days potentially. Across in Germany and France, you're talking 100 odd days. We're not even on the same field as them in terms of the amount of storage we have.
Well, it's where it usually is. As I said, we're monitoring the situation.
Enough,
well, I'm not going to come on your show and start to spread panic. There's no immediate threat to supply, so we will keep monitoring the situation. And if action is required, then I'm sure that will be considered. But the whole situation here underscores why the government is right to seek to move away from dependence on fossil fuel towards clean energy. Because if we were generating more of our own energy here at home, things like wind and solar power, then we wouldn't be subject to the shocks that we see currently in the Gulf and previously in Ukraine because of Russia's invasion.
Are we looking at investing more in gas storage?
Well, that's being kept under review. Of course it is.
And finally, the Defence Investment Plan. We've been asking everybody who comes on the programme, when will we see it published? It was due last summer, then it was delayed till autumn. We are obviously in a very different situation to where we were then. When are we going to see this published?
Well, we'll see that as soon as we possibly can. It's important that we take the time to get it right, but it's worth remembering that the government announced just last week £1 billion of extra investment in helicopters. So the investment is already happening, but the review will be published as soon as it's completed.
Steve Reid, Housing Secretary, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.